People always underestimate how powerful Amanda Waller is. And in Absolute Power, this comic, she takes out the entirety of the Justice League. And it's all Batman's fault. So what this does is this initially opens up with like some guys in Metropolis executing a robbery, and Superman just like freezes their helicopter and uses his heat vision to take the guns out of their hands and so on and so forth. It's business as usual, right? But then like one of these guys panics, fires off a shot, and instead of it like ricocheting off of Superman, it hits him. Like it literally penetrates him, right? And so Superman, who just never really gets injured, just starts falling from the building. And then after that, it's just this kind of open war on all the superheroes who were out there, because you switch over to Keystone City with Animal Man. He's not overly important, although his New 52 run was really amazing. But basically he can like talk and control animals. Think of him as like the animal version of Swamp Thing, basically. The problem is like once he steps down on the ground, people immediately start attacking him. Right? Like without a moment's hesitation, they just start like pummeling this guy. And so Batman and Robin are just kind of watching all this unfold, and it comes off so strange because there's no real conceivable reason for why the general public would just suddenly turn on superheroes and attack them everywhere they can. But then what you start realizing is that what's going on here is an entire kind of campaign of putting out like false information, so much so that nothing the general public is seeing is real. A good example of this is that with Batman and Superman watching everything, there's this footage that comes out of Philadelphia police, right? It says they have no explanation as to why the captain began attacking innocent civilians. Of course, referring to like Captain Marvel, Shazam, whatever you want to call him. And then you have Mr. Terrific, right? Who chimes in and he's just like, that is not true. Like I was literally hanging out with a captain not too long ago. We were fighting Giganta, right? Nightwing says the same thing. He's like, there's this footage of the Titans like running around launching these attacks, but like we weren't there at that point. It's all fake. Nothing that anybody is seeing is real. And so one of the things that happens is there's this footage of like Hal Jordan, right? Who just like goes on this rampage, and Wonder Woman's just like, no, like Hal doesn't even have his ring anymore. Like what in the world is going on here? Firestorm launches an attack, Blue Beetle launches an attack. And so everything that everybody's seeing is all just false. People don't know how to make any of this stuff make sense. So here's the question, right? Like, how do you get from point A to point B? How do you get from this place where society loved superheroes to superheroes seemingly going on a rampage and like attacking everybody? Okay, so wind the clock back here. Let's talk about a story called Absolute Power Ground Zero. So this was kind of like a prelude to the main Absolute Power event. Again, you know, that's what we're talking about here. But what it did is it had a series of mini stories, and only one of them is really relevant to what it is that we're talking about here. And this is basically the discovery of the wife or the bride of Brainiac, right? So all the stuff that we're talking about comes out of the Batman and Superman comics. And the long and short of it is that Batman had basically created a kind of fail-safe device called Failsafe, that if Batman ever went off the rails and killed somebody, Failsafe would activate, and then of course it would basically take Batman out because he was a credible danger at that point in time. Failsafe basically became self-aware. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes into it that we don't need to go into here, but it effectively became autonomous, and now it sees all superheroes as something that needs to be destroyed. But the wife of Brainiac comes out of the Superman comics, in the sense that what ended up happening is Brainiac showed up on Earth, started capturing all the superheroes, siphoning off their powers, so on and so forth, and using those powers to basically charge and bring life to a female version of himself, so he could have some kind of companionship. The lengths that people will go to find love in the 21st century. And so what ends up happening is ultimately Brainiac was defeated, and his wife was just kind of shut down before she could actually activate, came crashing down into Earth. And that's where Amanda Waller picks up. Because what happens is Amanda Waller and Failsafe both find the bride of Brainiac, but she's kind of a clean slate, right? There's no real knowledge in her memory banks at all. And so it makes her incredibly easy to manipulate, because while she's crash landed there and with Waller and Failsafe responding, that Peacemaker just sort of keeps an eye on everything going on in Metropolis. And he basically tells them, like, you know, Superman's come back and all those people whose powers were taken by Brainiac, those powers are being restored. So basically the coast is clear, do what you need to do, and head back to the base of operations. And that's exactly what they do. And so what ends up happening is, because of the technological abilities of Failsafe, a living computer, essentially, it allows Amanda Waller to basically hijack the Brainiac Queen, and then in turn inject herself into this woman's mind, or this machine's mind, and then appear as a kind of assistant or aide of sorts. And that's why you get this moment where basically Amanda Waller is in a house out in the middle of nowhere that looks like Kent Farm, to be honest, and then in turn this little girl shows up there, right? That little girl is the in-brain personification of the Brainiac Queen, essentially. And what Amanda Waller does is, the first thing that happens is when she approaches as somebody there that's to help her, right, a kind of mentor, Superman shows up to attack. Because much like what you would expect from a child, things are perceived in very simple terms, right? Absolute good, absolute bad, no real moral ambiguity or complexity to life. And so because of that, of course, Amanda Waller ends up taking out Superman and then tells this little girl, superheroes are dangerous, right? Superheroes are really, really bad guys. And it's our job to make sure that the world is safe from superheroes. We can't let them win. And so because it's a simulation, time passes at whatever speed you want it to, right? You could live 1 year in this simulation for every 1 second that passes in the real world. And that's kind of what happens, that over the course of like 20 years, Amanda Waller basically brainwashes this chick, right? Teaches her that superheroes are bad, that superheroes are dangerous, that they're really a massive catastrophe for the world overall. And here's what's so interesting about that. You could make a credible argument, and maybe we'll make a video about this, but you can make a credible argument that Amanda Waller is not wrong, right? I mean, when you look at superheroes as a whole, and you look at how crazy the world is, Gotham did not become as crazy as it was until Batman showed up. It wasn't until Bruce Wayne became Batman that you had the Joker, and you had Scarecrow, and you had the Penguin, and you had Two-Face, and all these different guys. So you can make an argument there, right? That like the arrival of superheroes basically necessitated the emergence of equally dangerous or more dangerous villains. So superheroes make the world worse. And that's even leaving out things like the emergence of guys like Darkseid, right? This multiversal force of evil and different things along those lines. Now, of course, it also begs the question, would guys like Darkseid have invaded Earth anyway, right? And if the superheroes weren't there, who would protect it, right? So there's, of course, that kind of savior aspect that comes into it. But I say all that to say, when it comes to someone like Amanda Waller, and when it comes to the world's perception of superheroes, there is no simple moral clause here. There is no superheroes good, villains bad, done and done, right? There is a lot of moral ambiguity and complexity in all of it. And so ultimately, like after this 20 years have passed, Amanda Waller basically ends the simulation, and she just kind of tells the Queen, who for the most part, she seems to have revealed over the course of these 20 years, like, this is all a simulation, nothing you're seeing here is real. And she tells her, like, just follow my voice. And so once Amanda Waller emerges and the Queen is basically turned on, right, like allowed to come online, she emerges viewing Amanda Waller as a kind of mother of sorts, and things go forward from there. And so jumping back to where we are right now, that's the assault. That's the campaign that's going on. It's a multifaceted effort between Amanda Waller, the Brainiac Queen, and Failsafe to take out all the superheroes. And they do. They succeed in this story, right? In this first part that we're covering here. It's amazing because you do get a couple small little things in between. For example, you switch over to the Daily Planet, and one of the things you learn is kind of a reminder for the person who's getting into DC Comics for the first time of the nature of the Daily Planet, why it's different from other news organizations. In this instance, basically Lois Lane is yelled at because all the other news organizations are just kind of running with all the information they have and then verifying it after. But the response of Lois is like, that's not what the Daily Planet does, right? We're not lazy, that we verify our information and then we report the facts, which ultimately means that more often than not, you're going to end up behind the scenes. But the bigger thing here is that there's this kind of question that everybody has, which is, who is behind all of this? What's the reason for this? Because the superheroes don't know that Amanda Waller, Failsafe, and the Brainiac Queen are doing all of this, that Amanda Waller is really the one spearheading it. And so what you end up doing is you switch over to a kind of meeting and a conversation between Sarge Steel and Amanda Waller in the Hall of Order. Now, for those of you guys who don't know who Sarge Steel is, technically he's been around since like 1964 in his own solo series. He started off as a Charlton Comics character, and then when Charlton Comics was bought out by DC Comics, he became a DC Comics character. He's not overly important. he's one of these kind of like Nick Fury type guys where he's just behind the scenes and every once in a while he pops up and he just kind of serves a higher group, whether it's OMAC or Checkmate or the federal government itself, right? It just kind of switches around. Checkmate is the Maxwell Lord team, by the way. If you don't know who that is, it's not a huge deal. Just a hidden hand out there in the world trying to manipulate everything that goes on. But what happens is that Sarge Steele kind of comes in and says, look, like the writ that was provided to you guys by the President of the United States was that you guys were going to monitor superhero activity. You were not going to do anything crazy like this. But the response of Amanda Waller is probably the best response that she could get, right? She's like, our remit is whatever I say it is. And I let the president's speech get no further than the Rose Garden. Right now, we control all media. And that's the coolest thing about Amanda Waller. She's like the villain no one ever sees coming. And she's not really a villain per se, but as a just regular person, Amanda Waller is so intriguing because Superman could kill her in any one of 1,000 ways, right? He could just fly down and grab her and throw her into the sun, right? He could just throw her into deep space. He could kick her head off her shoulders if we're a Mr. Sunday Movies video. He could do it in any number of different ways, but like he doesn't, because Amanda Waller is always holding the cards and she's always got a one-up on everybody, right? She's like the J. Edgar Hoover of DC Comics. It's amazing, right? And so because of that, she basically tells Sarge Steele, who says that everything that's going on here is basically disinformation and that ultimately it's working, right? There's a huge uptick across social media when it comes to, superhero paranoia. Waller is a believer, right? She says like calling it disinformation is not really fair. I've said it for years. Superheroes are anything but. They can create more trouble than they avert. They have absolute power and they answer to no one. They adhere to a child's idea of morality. And like all children, they occasionally have tantrums that could turn this world to ash. And she says, I call that information. We're simply reminding people of that fact. And she says, it's unbelievable how wrong the Lex Luthors and the Jokers of the world have gotten it all this time. You don't need fear gas to shift public opinion. You don't need telepathic mind control. In a world run in a media echo chamber, no matter how many busloads of nuns Superman saves, you can make an uncomfortably large number of people doubt their own eyes and ears. All you have to do is refine your message into a memorable catchphrase. Superheroes are coming for you, and repeat it 50,000 times. And she's not wrong, right? Because we as human beings have what's called a negativity bias, right? Because, I don't know, like 1,000,000 years ago, two cavemen were walking along a path and they both heard a rustling in the bushes. And the one who ran away lived longer than the one who went to go investigate. And he went back to the tribe and told them what happened. And they all said, we should run away from predators. And ever since then, right, humanity has a built-in negativity bias, right? Stranger danger, different things like that. And so when you kind of bring this scenario to people where you say like, you see those gods up there listening, what would happen if like they decided to kill us one day? What do we do? How do we stop them, right? That fear begins to take hold. That negativity bias comes to bear. And as a result of that, in times of desperation, people will believe what they want to believe. And so I don't really say that to be like cynical and just be like, the world sucks and is trash. I simply mean to say that like there is an element to us as human beings that sort of lean more towards negativity than positivity, because from an evolutionary perspective, that's how we survive. And so it's really, really interesting when you kind of look at how Amanda Waller navigates this world that she's in and the lengths she's willing to go to. She even shows Sarge Steele like the nature of the Brainiac Queen and everything that goes into it. And that's when Failsafe shows up. Right? And he says, winning a war is about keeping the enemy off balance. Did you not stop to think how much power and data it takes to seize half of the internet and mass disperse all that footage? Amanda, it's time for phase 2. And so you do have this moment where Sarge Steele is a little uncomfortable about what's going on, where he's talking to Failsafe, and Failsafe is like, do you have concerns, right? You seem to have doubts. And initially Sarge Steele is like, no, okay, yes, but no, not really, because he says, I swore an oath to protect the United States from all threats, both foreign and domestic. And the reality here is that while superheroes are not a domestic threat now, they could be. And there have been instances in the past past where a superhero or even a supervillain has gone rogue? And is there any real differentiation between a superpowered hero and a superpowered villain? That at the end of the day, all we as the normal people are doing is just relying on Superman just choosing not to kill us. That's really all we have, right? That's just the hope he decides not to eradicate us all. And that's just not enough, right? And so it's really, really interesting, right? I love the way this whole thing is written. It's so phenomenal. And so he says, like, this is Amanda's war, and it's been brewing for years, then erupting over just a few weeks. The conflict with Wonder Woman and the Amazons, the Titans seizing military power in the name of heroism, fighting a worldwide crisis they were responsible for. Amanda sees metahumans as self-governing agents of chaos who are as much a threat to humanity as they are a solution. And so in the face of that, if the people who approach you can be your jailer as much as they can be your protector, should you just get rid of them, right? And just be the one who determines your own destiny. So it's really cool. It's really, really fascinating. Like I love the way this story is handled. The kicker here is he says wants or desires. That's the concern, because that's what I can't help being concerned about. A want can be achieved, right? I want $1 million. Cool. I can work for a period of time, invest money over however a length of time it takes, and then have $1 million. But a desire is a void that nothing can ever completely fill. It will always be hungry. And so Amanda Waller desires to destroy superheroes because her desire for that is rooted in something much, much deeper. And simply just destroying superheroes, wiping out superheroes, that's not going to solve it. It's not going to solve the problem. Whatever that problem happens to be, it's always going to be one more thing. And so it's really awesome, right? Because what we find out is you have Failsafe who shows up and he tells Amanda Task Force 7 is ready for deployment. Now, Task Force 7 is cool because he simply says, all we're waiting for is the word, right? And Amanda Waller says the word is given, and the attack immediately goes out because in Titan's Tower, you have Cyborg, also known as iPhone. That's what we call him because, you know, guys a walking, talking iPhone. Like he's immediately overtaken, right? By what appeared to be a firewall, but they're active defenses. And in turn, like they just shut him down completely. And then Oracle chimes in, right? Barbara Gordon chimes into Batman and she says, the pollution's spreading. Just to accelerate the confusion, we're now seeing fake videos of pundits debating the authenticity of the fake videos that are circulating around the internet. Meanwhile, more heroes are victims of mob violence overseas. Knight and Squire, half the global guardians, Batman, we're doing our best to stop these videos, but we still cannot source them. And so while Batman and Robin are kind of on the hunt, sort of trying to figure out what's going on, you have Nightwing who chimes in for a moment and says, this smells like something Amanda Waller would do, right? A massive misinformation campaign going out there into the world, feeding on the inherent fears, right? Maybe even the subconscious fears of people. If anybody were going to do something like this, it would be Amanda Waller. But the reality here is that it doesn't really make any difference because whether or not the superheroes are in groups, in teams, whether or not they're by themselves, it doesn't have any bearing. They are all equally taken out because Task Force 7 is insanely powerful. In Metropolis itself, kind of switching back to the way we started this video, right, with Superman being shot and just like falling down from the rooftop, then he's rescued by Connor Kent and Jonathan Kent. Of course, Connor being the clone of Superman from his death back in the 1990s, and Jonathan Kent being the biological son of Superman. The problem here is that when they get to him, it's like, okay, how in the world is this happening? Because it's not a kryptonite bullet, right? Like it's just a bullet from a gun, right, that shot him in the chest. Like, what in the world is going on? But then suddenly, his powers shut down. That's when they realize, like, this is what's happening. Like, his powers are gone. But then their powers shut down, and they end up just crash landing down into the ground. And like, it happens to every single person out there that has powers. And then suddenly, Amanda Waller broadcasts to the world and she says, good evening, I'm Amanda Waller and I am here to help. And she says, like all of you, we here at the US Bureau of Sovereignty have been horrified by the now constant danger of devastating metahuman attacks against ordinary citizens. But we need no longer live in fear, not for ourselves, not for our children, not after today. effective immediately in the wake of these unprecedented superhuman strikes that have claimed so many lives worldwide these last few days. My bureau is actively dispatching our ultimate solution to the existing danger posed by all superhumans. Even as I speak, my designated task force is ending the threat permanently. And here's where things get nuts, because what happens is you switch over to Batman, and as this broadcast goes out, it suddenly dawns on him. It suddenly clicks to him, right? And he was like, there's no way that I could have possibly missed this, right? Like, the only way Amanda Waller would ever go this route is if she thinks she's already won. Because remember, Amanda Waller is a character who operates in the shadows until it's time for the killing blow. Then she emerges, right? Then she comes out and she makes her presence known. So the fact that she's already here means it's already game over, because you get an assault on the Flash family, the Flash family loses their super speed, right? They can't run at super speed anymore. And that's where Batman's like, we played right into her hands, because the goal of the superhero community in the face of all this kind of false information was to go out publicly and to demonstrate to the world what they were actually doing, right? That like they were saving people, they were helping people, different things like that. And Batman says like that was the real purpose of the global hack, to lure us all into the open. And he says, I made a massive miscalculation. All this time, I thought Amanda Waller was playing chess, that I could outwit her if I was just clever enough. But she's not playing chess. She's rolling tanks, because what you find out is Task Force 7 is Amazos. It's just an army of Amazo robots who are just going out there and sucking away, siphoning away all the superpowers from all the different members of the superhero community. And they literally broadcast out. They say, surrender to us. Resistance is pointless. If you have superpowers, we will take them. If you utilize devices, we will drain them. If you use magic, you will no longer remember how to conjure it. But here's the kicker. Here's the weird thing. How in the world were they able to pull that off? It's one thing to say, like, we're going after all the superheroes, right? I mean, that's not an uncommon thing, right? I mean, people go after all the superheroes all the time. And even during the Batman comics, when you got to the end of the Failsafe storyline and all that kind of stuff, that Failsafe didn't know everything about the Justice League. He knew everything Batman knew, but there were some things that Batman didn't know. That was especially important after the Tower of Babel storyline back in the early 2000s when Batman betrayed the Justice League. Then it was kind of like, okay, so the Justice League is not going to give Batman the key to the city. They'll give him the key to like that part of the city over there, but there are some secrets they still keep. They're contained with the one person they would never suspect to ever betray them. Because what happens is Batman broadcasts out and he says, stay connected and wait for further instruction. Waller does not know about this secret frequency that we are all using amongst ourselves in order to communicate. And a voice chimes out of nowhere and says, that's wrong, Batman. And you end up finding out the person who betrayed them all is Green Arrow, Oliver Queen, right? And where Batman's just like, what are you doing? He says, I'm on the right side of history. He says, I'm sorry, I really am, but I've been warning all of you super folks for a long time that us humans do not appreciate being looked down on, and you would not listen to me. Sure, you're great at capping volcanoes, but fixing society's real problems, actually empowering the powerless, affecting real meaningful change, you get an F for effort. And where Batman says, like, this makes no sense, you're supposed to be one of us, the response of Green Arrow is, not anymore, right? He's like, I'm on Team Waller now, and we're coming for you. And so it's crazy because what he does is he reveals this is much, much bigger than Batman realizes. Green Arrow says, there's nowhere to run. You guys are all done. Waller brokered a deal with the United Planets, so no one gets to leave Earth. There's no space cavalry coming, right? No one gets in, nobody gets out. And even guys like Martian Manhunter, John Jones, which if you read JLA from 1998 by Grant Morrison, is more powerful than Superman. Even this guy is being overtaken by Amazos. They can make themselves invisible, they can hide, all kinds of stuff. And Green Arrow chimes back in and he says, we've sealed away the time stream and the microverse. Waller knows your secrets, so there's no escape, no exit. There is no hope whatsoever. Still, I know you guys, you're thinking we fought Amazos before. If we can figure out how to destroy them, our powers will be restored and we can win. And he says, sorry, but those are the old rules. This is a new design and a new technology. What's taken is irreversible. There is no return mechanism. Your powers are never coming back. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. I told you guys, Absolute Power is amazing so far. I love it. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section, and I will catch you all later. Peace.